Today we have Laurie Pieters-James. She is a specialist offender profiler and founder of Cybereti from South Africa, and I'm excited to talk to her today. We had a conversation the other day that went nonstop for an hour, and I am so excited to hear what she has to say, looking at crime in South Africa compared to essentially here in the United States. And I'm from California. And in my role as a forensic psychologist, I'm always fascinated about crime patterns, the criminal justice system, and what experiences people are having abroad. And I've been to the UK or been to different areas and trying to understand the system better. And I'm so excited to have Laurie here today, who's a specialist also in cybersecurity. But so you're living in South Africa. I would love to hear more about you, how you got started. Tell me a little bit about your company and what you do currently.
So I started my career in the South African Air Force as an air traffic controller, strangely enough. And then I moved into intelligence work. And finally, I decided to go and study profiling in early 2000s. After I was caught up in a very strange sex crime case, accidentally on purpose, but yes, it was very interesting. It was the first trial in South Africa where a female was put on the sex offenders register. And that got me very, very interested in the psychology of crime. So I went off to study, and then I did a specialist degree in offender profiling, and after that, an honors in criminology. And then over time, I moved into the cyber aspect because we started to see cybercrime impacting on all crime. And from there on, my company now is called Cybereti. We focus across the board on all crime. So it's a broad spectrum security solution, from providing cybersecurity to our clients. And then I also assess criminals, and testify as an expert witness in court. So it's fairly broad, but we map crime and we deal with crime holistically, from the fact that people need water right through to high-end cybersecurity. Because in South Africa, the needs of the community are so diverse that you literally have to focus on that need of the community, because a person that has no food or water really doesn't care about crime. They're subject to it anyway, and it's not their focus. So crime does not become an element in their life. Security is not yet an element because they're still struggling for food and water. So it's a very interesting field. I love my work. It's different every day, and I meet amazing people every single day. And I wake up in the morning and I don't know what's going to happen. My day can go anyway. I may have the best laid plans that often go quite awry.
Yes, it sounds fascinating. Going back to what you said about the first female sex offender, was that in the early 2000s?
Yes, it was. Her name was Cezanne Visser. She was an advocate who worked with her boyfriend, who was also an advocate of the High Court. And he was a pedophile and a narcissist and a psychopath, all rolled into one. But obviously, a psychopath is automatically a narcissist. Yes, they raped all their personal assistants, and then he diversified into children, and they took out literally children like library books. The social workers were giving them kids on weekends. They were approaching orphanages, and then with a promise of exposing the children to the legal community and the modeling world and giving them a fantastic weekend. And of course, these children were subjected to Rohypnol, drugging, and then raped. He did the same to all his personal assistants. He chose young women to work for him that were vulnerable with children who couldn't just afford to up and leave their jobs. And he would abuse all of these women as well. And then he fled South Africa in the middle of his trial, leaving his female partner to stand trial here. She did not flee. He went to Russia and then ended up in Belarus. And he did the same thing in Russia. He was absolutely diabolical. He made he would do the strangest things. He would force the girls that were with him to tattoo his name on their genitalia. He would brand them. He would mark them like a dog marking his territory. And then he would abuse them. He would make them denounce their God. He made them refer to him as his sex god. And and then he fled South Africa, ended up in Russia, did the same thing in Russia, eventually had 2 kids in Russia, 2 young children. And then bizarrely, somehow he ended up in Belarus, where he decided to rob a bank with some counterparts. And they attempted to rob the bank, sort of went into the bank and said, tried to rob them, and they were attacked by the people in the bank. He fled. They basically succumbed he's got his 2 accomplices under control. They were then dragged off by the Belarusian police, and obviously there's not too much human rights there, interrogated. And they pointed him out, and then they arrested him. But he was pointed out and identified, so ironically, by a 10-year-old child. So he really got his comeuppance, and eventually he was convicted. I'm not sure if he was convicted of the sex offenses, but he was convicted of bank robbery and hooliganism, which is a crime in Belarus. And he was given a 13-year sentence. And then recently, apparently, he was paroled. The South African government was going to extradite him, and that fell apart for some reason. And apparently, he was paroled and has disappeared. But to be honest, we don't want him back, because the only person that can convict him is me. And he never raped me personally or did anything to me personally. So my testimony would convict him of perjury and solicitation of perjury, because he tried to elude that I was the only person that could use a computer in his office. And of course, one of the charges was the creation and distribution of child pornography. So he tried to implicate me, and that was his downfall, because that was when I actually turned state witness against him. And then, as I said, he went to Belarus, and my testimony convicted her.
Wow, shocking. Uh, what is this man's name? I have to fully follow up on this.
Actually, you don't need to. I wrote a book. I will send it to you in digital format. The book is called Shattered Lives, The Story of Advocate Barbie. Because in this entire situation, what he did was he had a habit of creating the woman he wanted. So he took her as just a student from university with dark reddish hair and very slight, very timid, probably a virgin, the young advocate, when she met him. And he turned her into a Barbie doll. Literally, he had her breasts enlarged 3 times from a normal A or B cup to a double D. He literally turned her into a Barbie doll, and she was named, sort of got the pseudonym in the South African press of Advocate Barbie. Shame. So yeah, it was very, very tough on her. And she got a 7-year sentence, of which she served 3. she came out of prison and has now married and settled to a life behind the scenes, but she can't practice as an advocate. She does do legal consulting work for a company, but she's not allowed to practice as a lawyer anymore. So he destroyed this young girl's life. I mean, she was 24. Not that she was innocent, because she was soliciting child victims for him on the streets of Johannesburg. And she was actually terrified to go and do this on the streets of Johannesburg because she was in danger. So what she did is she came up with a plan to approach the orphanages and take these vulnerable children. They masqueraded as a married couple, which they were not, in order to get their hands on these kids. And the South African social workers, being as incompetent as they are, were just lending out the kids like library books. Nobody had ever done a background check or anything, or checked on the home or anything. It was absolutely insane.
Shocking that both of these people are out. That the
Well, yeah.
system wasn't, they were never actually convicted for these sexual crimes.
No, she was. So she was charged with 14 charges, of which she was convicted on 11. And one of the victim that actually laid the initial charge against her was a young girl. She was 14. She was a prostitute. She'd grown up on the streets. Her story is another by absolutely diabolical story. This child was on the streets with her sister from the age of 9 after her grandfather abused her. And then she was willing to have sex with Dirk Prinsloo, no problem. All she wanted was a cell phone. And he promised her a cell phone and a SIM card, and he went back on his deal. So she stole clothing from the partner, Advocate Barbie, or Cezanne Visser, and he laid charges against her, and she laid charges against him because he had drugged and raped that night. But she would have been quite willing to have sex with him. She was a sex worker on the streets from the age of 9, and she eventually the sentence handed down for her crimes was 1 year for that rape. And she came to me at the end of the trial and she said, "Laurie, is my life only worth 1 year?" And a couple of years later, she was a heroin addict as well. She had a lot of problems and a borderline personality disorder. And she came to me and she said, "Is my life only worth 1 year?" And then 3 years later, she committed suicide in the bush in Botswana.
It's devastating.
Yeah. And that's and I mean, that was actually justice in South Africa. At least this person was convicted, but we don't see justice here very often.
What does justice mean to you? How would you define that?
Justice is due process, and everybody is entitled to that, and a suitable sentence. I don't consider justice revenge. That those are two principles that you should never confuse. Justice is not revenge. Justice is a restoring of the balance. But unfortunately, when you've done this much damage, it's very difficult to restore the balance. But for a rape of a minor, you are supposed to, under South African law, get 15 years. That is for the first offense. But we don't see that here. We very seldom see arrests even. If they are arrested, the justice system is so eroded with corruption and other problems. Just people that shouldn't hold positions, that are in positions they can't deal with, uneducated lawyers, police that can't spell it and the. So you can imagine trying to wade through a statement. So yeah, it's not something we see terribly often. In fact, in 100 crimes, we're lucky if we get a 2%, probably a 0.5% conviction. But to a maximum of 2% of reported crimes. So in South Africa, people don't even bother to report crime, really and truly, because you get abused by the police, abused by the prosecutors. I've seen disabled children that were raped that never even got the case to trial. And there was testimony, there were witnesses. These cases should have been prosecuted. They were never prosecuted. They die in the magistrate's court.
What is the criteria for becoming a police officer? You said some of them can barely, read or write. What is the criteria? Is there
Well, you're supposed to have what we call in South Africa matric or grade 12, which is 12 years of schooling. You're supposed to be literate, but they're not, unfortunately. Police officers are very poorly paid here. It's a very dangerous job. I mean, we have we're the fifth most violent society on the planet. So South Africa is fifth on the world crime ratings as a dangerous place to live. Our police are overrun. They really are. But you know what? The problem has been that if you can't beat them, join them. So we now have a policing organization that is largely known as an organized crime syndicate itself. And I can give you many examples. But yeah, they're supposed to have matric. What happened in 2010 was we held the World Cup here. And when they had the World Soccer Cup held in South Africa in 2010, the government recruited about 10,000 officers that they neglected to screen. Completely neglected. They didn't even do a criminal records check. We have no idea if they are gangsters from Nigeria, the Congo, local gangsters. They were just, if you applied to the police basically in that period, you got in. And unfortunately, this has led to serious consequences, and mostly the consequences for the public.
it's shocking, horrifying. Uh, I was just thinking I'm in California, and so there was a prison that recently shut down here because all the officers and even the captain were raping all the women in prison. The prison shut down. They were all transferred to a federal prison in Texas. And when I went to interview one of the forensic psychologists who um, worked in the prison, I asked, how did we get here? Which to this point, and one of the things was they were doing a background check on they weren't doing a psychological evaluation. It was slipped through the cracks. They didn't want to fund it. And the results have been catastrophic. Uh, what you're talking about is so much more extreme, but that was the only thing to compare it to, but just showing the necessity of how dangerous it is to get someone into a position of power like that.
It is extremely dangerous. I will give you a statistic that people really don't want to know about here, and everybody tries to sweep under the carpet. But I have experimented with this particular scenario myself. Now, you guys have 911 if you have an emergency. In South Africa, if you phone our 10111, you're lucky if somebody answers the phone, firstly. If you phone the station, you will die before they answer the phone because they will sit, and I know this. I've volunteered there. I've seen it. I've been there with my clients. They will sit 10 of them in the charge office and look at the phone and look at each other, and nobody will pick it up. And they're not doing anything. They're just hanging around. So if you phone the police in South Africa, you will die before they get there if you're in the middle of an armed robbery and the person is a dangerous offender that's willing to shoot, they're not going to respond in time, and we know that. So in South Africa, we have private security if you have the money. And here again, it's really difficult, because if you're living in a township, you don't have the money for private security. If you're living in a sort of a middle class, you budget that into your budget, because everybody's paying 400 to 500 rand for private security. And herein again lies the problem. Why fix the police? Because you're going to destroy the security industry, who is all run by ex-police. So, yes, it's a bit of a catch-22.
Wow.
But yeah, you cannot phone the police. And if you do actually approach the police, the likelihood of you becoming involved in a secondary crime is high. I can give you an example. I was attacked about a year ago. I went to the police. I reported the crime by two men who drove me off the road and attacked me. I reported the crime. Within a few days, I was phoned by a so-called Captain Kekana of the Bridge police station in South Africa, who told me that he had my case, and he what did he say to me initially? Oh, yes, that he had just phoned to inform me that there was a counter charge of assault laid against me by these two huge Afrikaans men. And he would accept 3,000 rand for me to make from me to make the counter charge disappear. So I said to him, "You're talking absolute rubbish." Anyway, I strung them along. But then they tried to get me to go to the police station, which I did. I sat there. They never arrived. They had told me they had apprehended the offenders, which they didn't do. They took a bribe. And the case went to the magistrate's court. They had my testimony. I had video. I had photographs. I had everything. And I was phoned by the captain of this police station and told that the case was nolli prosecute. How can you get a case nolli prosecute where I had taken video of the guys, I had taken photographs, I had photographs of my car, I never saw, and I'm a reasonably high profile person. And that's how I was treated. So you can imagine how your general person is treated. It's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, no one's safe.
No. In South Africa, if you happen to be a victim of crime and you have to deal with the police, you're not safe. But you're not safe anyway. And that's why I said we invest in private security.
It's all terrifying, and I can't imagine being able to live like that. So without, you have to pay for your own security, or like, how do people exist in that environment? Are they just living in fear?
They do live in fear, but we also are. I mean, I have friends coming from Europe, and they're absolutely horrified. They tell us we live in jails. We have bars on our windows. We have high walls. We have electric fences around them. We have alarms. We have cameras. We have everything that you can pay for. You put in security-wise in South Africa. So, and you connect that to an armed response security company that when your alarm goes, they will send somebody. So that is how we live. We are vigilant. If you stop your car in South Africa, you don't stop closer than 30 meters to the person in front of you, because if you stop at a traffic light, for example, they smash and grab through your windows and steal your handbag or your Coke or your chocolate or whatever you've got. If you stop facing the gate when you want to drive into your driveway, you will probably be hijacked in some areas. If you drive close to a cash in transit vehicle, the cash in transit vehicles, they blow up. They attack with AK-47s in the middle of the street, in the middle of the day. So you don't drive too close to a cash in transit vehicle. You stay away from them. These are the kind of things that we live with. But as South Africans, we're kind of used to it. I mean, if in South Africa you hear that somebody's been robbed or killed, you just kind of go, another one. That is our response as a general population. We are so conditioned to accept this. It's just another person. There isn't a person in South Africa that hasn't been touched by violence. It's a country living in a post-traumatic stress disorder. The entire country is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and then we have no political protection either. There are openly politicians calling for the mass slaughter of white people. It's done on the stage and there's no prosecution. Kill the farmer, kill the Boer, kill the Afrikaners, kill the whites. They are allowed to stand in stadiums and sing this, brandishing AK-47s and inciting violence. This is acceptable behavior in South Africa.
Wow. I feel so safe living where I am right now and looking outside my window in my subdivided neighborhood. And here in California, like it's hard for me to imagine living in that state every day. Like the things I take for granted, like walking, going for a walk.
Oh, you
All
don't walk in
alone.
South Africa. You don't walk.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to be booking my vacation there, Laurie.
Again, it's about situational awareness here. It's a beautiful country. It's got beautiful people. It's got a broken political system. It's got a broken police force. And it's not that the police don't try. They really try. But as I feel my heart goes out to the detectives that try, because as a robbery and homicide detective, what you would call a robbery and homicide detective, our murder investigators have 300, 400 dockets on their table at any given time. There's nothing they can do. If you divide that by your time in a month and you've got 300 dockets on your desk at any given time, how much time can you spend on any one investigation? You kind of like have to pick two to do a reasonable job on two. But in the meantime, you've got another 150 coming in. The rapes, a woman is raped every 36 seconds in South Africa, and that's a conservative estimate. 36 seconds a rape. We have 27,000 murders last year. That's 70 people a day. People are paying attention to Gaza. Our statistics are as bad as Gaza and it's been ongoing for 20, 30 years. 34 years since the ANC took over. And the crime rates have just skyrocketed and there's no protection for society. And it's not just, I'm not talking about, this is not a race thing. We are lucky. We live in the suburbs. The people in the townships have no protection. We can organize. We have resources. Some people have resources, not all. I mean, there's white people in squatter camps too. But we have resources. I've seen community members trying to defend their communities in these well, we call them squatter camps. It's probably not the most politically correct word, but they have nothing. They go out with a stick, no bulletproof vests, no protection. Their stick and their cell phone light torch, and they march around in the townships trying to keep their community safe. And it's become mob justice, street justice. We see that. The farmers do the same thing. They also go out in the communities. They've got but they go on quad bikes or in their vehicles, and they have bulletproof vests and they have guns. Whereas the people in the townships have nothing. They're walking on foot, trying to protect their communities. Police are shot and their guns are stolen. I mean, we've had 400 stolen weapons from police in the last 6 months alone. Since the ANC took over, we've had 9 million rounds of ammunition stolen and over 9,000 guns, or 4,000 guns, 4,000 something guns, and 9 million rounds of ammunition stolen from the police or sold from the police, because they sell their guns and they sell their ammunition as well. And even the guns that are marked for destruction that have been confiscated, the police resell into the community. That's why I say it's organized crime syndicate.
You're right. The whole country's in a state of post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah. How do you survive? When, were you born in South Africa?
I was. And I lived, actually, strangely enough, in our neighboring country for 9 years, and that's Botswana. Now, that is the safest African country. And it's been very interesting since I came back to South Africa in 2020 in the middle of COVID. And being able to contrast the two societies is quite special, because they are the safest and we are one of the most violent societies, where Botswana was one of the least violent societies in Africa. In fact, they have the death penalty, we don't. And they enforce it liberally. Their police don't need to. They have so much respect for their police in Botswana that their police don't have to do anything except talk. Our police, they will literally run up to and take the gun away from the police officer while he's firing. They'll just overrun him. There is no respect for the law here or life. And there it's the complete opposite, which is very, very interesting.
Well, then I want to live in Botswana.
With the elephants.
Yeah.
They
I
have
wouldn't.
they have
I
130,000 elephants in Botswana.
Okay, I'll go there and ride an elephant. That'll be my transportation. But
You can't
so you,
ride them. We call them the Botswana roadblocks, because when you're driving, you'll suddenly find this huge, big gray thing in the middle of the road and they don't move. There's actually conflict with the elephants in Botswana because they've learned. It's very desert orientated in Botswana, and they've learned that they can go and dig up the pipes around people's houses, and they just walk through the walls and dig up your pipes in the morning, or toss over the cars. They've decided that it's quite fun to hurl cars around.
okay, so the elephants are running things there.
So there's a lot of elephant human conflict there. Not a lot. I mean, there's not much conflict in Botswana, but that is one of the issues, because Botswana didn't allow any hunting, and the elephant population swelled, and then now there's a competition for resources. But an angry elephant is something you don't want to be close to.
Well, I don't know. South Africa has just painted a horrifying picture. So I feel like I'd rather face an elephant than, you know, being raped in
Oh no,
South Africa.
No, I'm just saying. No, Botswana. Look, the elephants are up at Kasane, and they are magnificent animals, and you can interact with them. There's one beautiful place that you can go called Elephant Sands, where the elephants come down to drink. The community, the farm actually pumps water for them, and they come from all over. And you'll see one family come in, drink, play in the pond, and then the next lot come down, and that lot wander off again, and you have this completely traffic, the elephant traffic. They come family per family. You'll see them, they recognize each other, they all greet each other, they trumpet, the little ones play in the mud, and off they go again. It's actually incredible to spend a couple of days there. It's absolutely phenomenal.
And so tell me about the death penalty in Botswana. Is it hanging?
Yes, they hang.
And tell me how that works, like the timeline for.
Justice is swift in Botswana, very swift. So what usually happens if you're arrested, you will usually be tried within a year or two. I would say they usually finish. They move those trials along quite quickly. Remember, Botswana is a very small population. There's only 2.3 million people in the country. They have 23, I think, high court judges. So those cases have to go to the high court if they're death penalty cases. And the court, you literally, so the high court and the appeals court is in the same building. You just have to run around the block and go in the other side. And once the sentence is confirmed, if it is appealed, it's usually all tied up within a year or two. I mean, they don't hang around. And then the sentence is executed usually within the next 2 to 3 years. There's not a lot of time, and they used to be. I mean, I'm not sure now. When was the last time they hanged somebody? But yeah, they just proceed. It's and they don't even tell the family. Sometimes you'll go and visit your loved one, and then on one Sunday, and the next week you'll go back, and there won't be someone. They'll just hand you the clothes and say sorry. There's usually some sort of a notification. But Botswana justice is swift, even with the community. They don't take nonsense. If you steal from someone in Botswana, the community will surround you, and they will hold you until the police come. They will beat you while they're waiting for the police. There's no mercy for theft or bad behavior in Botswana. They don't tolerate it. Not the community, not the police, not the president, no one. It's a very structured, very disciplined, strict society. There's respect for the law. The people don't mess with the police. You don't backchat a police officer there. There is absolute respect for the law there. It's changing, unfortunately, because they're also having a migrant problem. They've got a lot of the people from Zimbabwe there now. And South Africa, they've actually had their first hijacking about a year ago, which was something that never happened, but it was South African criminals that were cross-border. And yeah, it was very swiftly dealt with. The helicopters went out, and they had a big shootout, and everybody, I believe, died that was a hijacker. But that is how it operates in Botswana. If you rape someone, if you murder someone, any kind of violent crime, you will hang.
And that just displaces all those with the criminal mindset to navigate south.
Well, Botswana is an interesting. It's a very wealthy country because they're one of the biggest diamond producers in the world. Their population is tiny, and their government looks after them. If you live in Botswana, you get a piece of land when you turn 21 as a citizen. So the university is free and government sponsored. In fact, they actually pay students a salary to attend university. You get a stipend of 1,400 pula a month, and the university gives you lodging and food and all of that, and it's all taken care of. And the population is well taken care of by their government. So you don't have this crazy criminal element. In fact, the murders that you do see there are usually somebody who wants somebody's land, or it's planned. It's not spontaneous, because all the bars close at 10 o'clock, at 11 o'clock there. You have to, there's no alcohol after 11. You can't order. The bars have to close. So people hang around until 12:30, 11, maybe quarter to 12, and then they go home. There's very low tolerance in Botswana for criminal behavior. There is a problem with child sex crimes. I had a case there at one stage where a 9-year-old had raped a 7-year-old. So there is that issue, which is also kept under the lap a lot, but nothing like what we see in South Africa.
Is there any type of sex registry for sex offenders?
Yeah, we both countries have that. It's, the problem with Africa in general is it's a very patriarchal society and a very unbalanced society from the male female side, which is why there are so many women empowerment schemes inside of the governments, and they are trying, but the balance is not in the favor of women, and the women are raised to be subservient and the good wife, and almost as if, every woman in South Africa knows that at some point, and this is the general feeling, that at some point she will be raped. It's not if, it's when, in certain communities. I've heard of cases where young girls, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, in certain cultures, they believe that if somebody comes to visit, like the uncle comes to visit, then he must be kept happy. So they give him a 7-year-old. And it's accepted in the culture. So, yeah, it's a tough one, and it's changing a mindset and changing acceptable norms. And that is always a challenge when you're dealing with cultures.
Wow. It's so starkly different between these two worlds. Like it's, shocking. So they're so polar opposite.
Look, I think we do have a lot of crime that intersects with America, because remember, in South Africa, we largely watch American TV. So we've grown up on American TV right from the days of Black Beauty and the Big Littlest Hobo, and and Dallas in the old days when TV first came out, Little House on the Prairie. So we grew up on a lot of the American series.
I grew up on Little House on the Prairie. And, Magnum PI, Murder, She Wrote, Matlock, like some of those old school true crime shows where you solve the mystery, those always fascinated me. What do they think of America or Americans based on what they see on television?
Well, unfortunately, something that we have to consider is this is again where your economic separation comes in, because a lot of South Africans that especially live in the rural areas can't afford a television. They don't have electricity. They don't have basic running water. They don't have anything. They have to walk sometimes 3, 4, 5, 10 kilometers to go and get water from the streams. And then, unfortunately, they get cholera because the water is so full of fecal matter at the moment because the government hasn't looked after the water systems. But so a lot of these people are still on general radio. They don't even speak English. Remember, in South Africa, what America doesn't understand is that South Africa has 11 official languages. 11. So there are people in this country that cannot speak to each other because they don't speak the same language. They don't understand each other on any level. And therein lies a problem. The people that grew up on American TV like me, I think there's a shift in Africa. We used to have positive feelings towards America. But I think remember that South Africa was largely supported by Russia during the struggle. So Russia gave them weapons. Russia gave the current government, I'm talking about, or not the current one, because we've changed from the ANC to the GNU now. So now we have a government of national unity, which is a little bit more diverse. But the ANC is still largely aligned with Russia. However, they don't sort of they like to straddle the fence, South Africa. So they'll take advantage of AGOA, and then we'll still support Russia, but we won't really support them. But then we fight with Israel because they want to align with the Palestinians because they try to make out like they are aligned to the Palestinians because of the Palestinian people's troubles. So South African, they exploit everything. But like I was saying, we used to have a largely positive attitude towards America, but I think there's been a shift. People now look at America as a bully. They say that why should they do as America says? We are an independent country. We should be making our own laws. And I think there's just a general feeling that the West has overstepped its boundaries in this country. As is largely the whole of Africa. There's a shift away from the West. They don't like the American morals. They don't like the gender politics. They don't align with that in any way, shape, or form. If you tell somebody in South Africa, rural South Africa, that a man is a woman, they will laugh at you. They will literally laugh at you. But if you go into other areas, like the Cape Town specifically is one of them, where these liberal sort of philosophies are largely accepted. But again, you have a country in conflict because it's not morally correct for some of our population. They can't even begin to process this. And they're very angry that these, what they call dubious moral standards, are being forced on us, and that we're being forced to accept this because it doesn't align with the culture. So I think it's again a very mixed bag, and from a political point of view, I think the ANC government specifically is feels more indebted to Russia than they do. So this Ukraine war has also caused a lot of rift and divided the population because half of them go one way and the other half the other way, and the rest of them don't care because they're trying to survive. That's the thing in South Africa. A lot of the time, people think we're very resilient, but we just don't care. We've got bigger problems.
Yeah, every day is just survive, basic needs.
Yeah, and sort of, yeah, especially when you see people in courts and the desperation. It is basic needs. It really is in a lot of cases. It's very sad for me that we haven't seen upliftment, because our taxes, we're one of the highest taxed countries in the world. I mean, we pay 47% personal tax and 15% VAT, and we get nothing for it. Nothing. It's all embezzled through corruption, which is a major problem in the country. And I mean, we are losing, I would say they admit to 10% of the GDP, but it's way more than that through crime.
Wow. Now in Botswana, for a person or a woman that wanted to get an education to become an attorney or forensic psychologist, not is forensic psychology, is that even is that a program that's offered there? What?
No. But Botswana is also, again, very privileged. So you can go and do an undergrad degree in psychology, and then the government will pay for you to study overseas to get your master's and your doctorate. They will send you. So
Okay.
you don't have
So
to. So if
that
somebody wanted to pursue that field, they could more easily than a South African.
So that is fascinating, because I have students reach out to me across the world, and I had someone recently, and this is all starting to put it into perspective of trying to understand their questions, right, across the world, for people that are trying to come to America and get an education. And I just had no idea that what the process looked like, or I had never considered that they send people here to get educated.
They send people all over the world. They send their veterinary. They have no veterinary school in Botswana either, but they send their vets to Australia.
Fascinating. Wow. You know, I'm sure some days you're contemplating, like, how have I survived this far? And in living there, like, I can't imagine everything you've seen or gone through. Like, is what I it's so fascinating that you are still there in South Africa, and this is your home, or this is where you live, and there's a certain amount of tolerance.
Look, I think South Africa teaches you respect.
Mm.
I respect the person that lives in unfortunate circumstances. I respect my criminals, my serial killers. I respect all of them, because until you have walked in the path of another person or in the footsteps of another person and actually walked their path, you cannot begin to judge. And it's not our place to judge in any case. It's our place to understand and try our best to correct the problems, and try to change mindsets and to make things better for people. And I stay in South Africa because there are some amazing things about this country. You can come to South Africa. The people are absolutely phenomenal. They are welcoming. We greet each other. We chat to each other. You can walk in the streets in South Africa and strike up a conversation with people. They're friendly. You would never do that in New York. Oh my word, they think you are insane. But we talk to each other. We socialize. We have the best weather. I mean, our weather is never terrible. I mean, it goes down to 10 degrees, and then it goes up to 40 degrees in summer. And we have the best weather. We can literally stay outside every single day. We're never constricted to our homes. We have open spaces. I can go and ride my horses in the bush and just ride for 30 kilometers. Yeah, maybe in South Africa, not without a weapon, but in Botswana, I could do that. I could just go and take my stallion and go running and riding and not fear for anything except maybe a black mamba, which is a snake. And there's lots of poisonous snakes. But yeah, it's an incredibly privileged life to be among the wildlife, among such diverse populations. I learn from people every day. Every day somebody teaches me something. I never have a day that goes by that I don't learn about humanity, about dignity, about perseverance, about sacrifice. I see this in our people every day. I see a spirit, a hope, a belief that things are going to change. And for me, that's why I stay, because it's such a special country and it's got such special people. We just have such disgusting politicians. And that's our problem. Our politicians are revolting and corrupt and evil people that don't put the people first. They're not interested in the people. They're interested in stealing from the people and enrichment. And that is our problem in South Africa. They divide us by race on purpose. They make race wars. It's always the bad white people, the bad Indian people, the bad Pakistani people be nepotistic against the people that have come down from Africa, like from the Congo, that have come here seeking a good life. This is all driven by the politicians, because as long as they keep the population divided, they don't have to answer for their sins, which are the biggest sins in the country. But the people are getting wise here. But and there's not on when people talk to each other here, it's not what the world thinks. We support each other. I mean, I Uber, I chat to the drivers. I won't drive in Johannesburg. It's too dangerous. I will not drive. I cannot abide it. If I have to go and testify in court, I Uber. And I chat and I learn about everybody's lives. And it's incredible, the camaraderie that we feel on a personal level, how we support each other, how we uplift each other. And then as you go up the ladder, this is where the conflict comes in. And the conflict comes in because they benefit from the corruption and from the divisive tactics.
Wow. Any opinions on America's politics?
Personally, I can give you my personal opinion. I can't give you the country's opinion. I think America's in trouble. I think that the Democratic candidate is an idiot who cannot even make a sentence. I've watched her on TV and I don't know what she's talking about. She doesn't seem to be able to string three comprehensive thoughts together. Some of her comments are very interesting. They come from Marxism, which is quite fascinating. And Donald Trump is Trump. I mean, he's an interesting person. I don't think he's a statesman. I don't think America has no real statesman left. I think it's a difficult choice for the American people. I think it's kind of sad that your system is like our system. You need money, and somehow the good people are sacrificed because nobody wants to go into politics because it's a dirty game and your life is at stake. I mean, you've seen the assassinations with Trump. I'm not pro either. I just watch them on TV. You know, again, it's very difficult to say what's going to happen. I wouldn't predict, but I'm concerned that Kamala Harris everybody's laughing at her. The Australians make fun of her every single day. I mean, just go and watch Sky News Australia. Everybody says we need a strong leader given the state of the world at the moment. And I don't really see that in either candidate. I think they're both extremely flawed. That's, again, my personal opinion. I'm not in America. I don't have to deal with the fallout. But I think that the decisions made by the Biden administration has weakened America. They're not strong. They've allowed untempered immigration. They're in trouble economically. The BRICS bloc is moving against them. There's de-dollarization. The economy is plummeting. And Donald Trump stands up and threatens the blocs that now want to de-dollarize, which is only going to motivate them more to de-dollarize. So, it seems to me like the world is crazy when you deal with politics. It doesn't matter where you go. I just hope the American people don't end up paying the price, because I travel to America. I love their people. They've always been so welcoming. And just to see the state of the country and the state of politics, and it's not just America, it's worldwide. But yeah, I am a little concerned when I watch these debates that, yeah, it's just sad. The Democrats, I shudder to think, and Trump is a kettle that nobody really knows what he's going to do. But he's very brave when he says that he's going to change everything, but he didn't last time. The swamp is still the swamp. He didn't get rid of the corrupt politicians. He surrounded himself with dreadful people like Pompeo that are all pushing their own agendas. And whether he sees that or not is difficult to say. But he's very arrogant. And that's also a concern, because at the moment we need diplomacy in the world, definitely not arrogance.
Yeah, there was a book published years ago, Duty to Warn, about Donald Trump. And it is, it's a state of disarray.
But it's not just America. If you look all over the world, it's chaos. There are no level heads. Everybody's screaming war. Everybody's screaming, China is demonized. China has put a lot of money into its economy. That's what they've done. They don't want to go to war with anybody. They want to build their economy. That is all that China wants to do. They build their economy. That's it. They want to be strong. They're protecting themselves. And I just think that we need a very, very level-headed person to lead the free world if America still wants to hold that role. Because I think the way that it's going, they're fast becoming irrelevant. The BRICS bloc doesn't care about America, and they don't care about Europe. They say Europe is dying, it's going to die, and unfortunately, they're not paying much attention to America either. They're saying they're tired of being bullied, and that's why I say I think diplomacy is needed. A very intelligent, bright politician that has compassion, understanding, and diplomacy is needed at the moment in the world, and not a loose cannon.
Yeah. Fascinating to hear your perspective on everything. If you could live anywhere in the United States, is there any place that you would like to come visit, or are you interested in coming to hang out with me in California?
Oh, I'd love to. I haven't been to California. I've been to New York and I've been to Florida. And I've got family in North Carolina. So that's rather devastating with the floods. But I'd love to see California. I'd love to see Kentucky, because I'm horse mad, as you can see in the background. And
my son lives in Kentucky.
Oh, really? So that would be interesting. I'd love to see the stud farms there. That to me would be very, very interesting. I used to breed racehorses. So, and I've still got warm bloods and another crazy racehorse mare. She's a bit nuts, but yeah, she's a special kettle. She's like I kept rescuing the same horse, and eventually I just decided to keep her. So that was quite funny. So yes, I'd love to see those areas. I've been to Atlanta as well. That was great. That was interesting. Um, and I'd love to see Chicago because it's interesting. I follow a lot of the crime in Chicago, and I think that they're struggling with a lot of similar issues to what South Africa struggles with.
Wow. Yeah. Um, Fascinating. I know you said you love animals. I know something on your LinkedIn profile says something about you donating to certain, is it animal rights or, and you have another pet
Yeah, so
that I would love
I
to hear
do.
about.
So I have always been involved in animal rescue because being in Africa, of course, the animal population here is very targeted. So we have a lot of poaching. Our rhino are poached. Our bush babies are poached and sold. Our pangolin is poached. There's a huge dark market where they trade in wildlife. So I did a lot of owl rescue. I did birds of prey for a while. I've always been involved in protecting specifically the wildlife. And when I was in Botswana, I was fortunate enough to be avian rescue at that stage. And our our vet, actually called me one day and she said to me, "Could you try with a bush baby?" They had a 9-gram bush baby who was in absolute trouble. He was dying. He was less than a day old and he'd been separated from his mother. And I had no experience with bush babies. And I said to her, "Well, I don't know. That's kind of a tall one from birds to bush babies. I have no idea what to feed it." Anyway, we got hold of South African Bush Baby Rescue Center and they sent us a diet. And I ran out in Botswana and bought protein shakes and porridge and all sorts of things and kitty milk because you can feed them kitty milk. And I took on this little thing. He really was a little thing at that stage. And yeah, I rehabbed him. Everybody told me, "Don't get attached, he's going to die." And I kept him alive. He lived in my bra. And everybody teased me. He was called the Botswana boob baby. They all called him the boob baby because I couldn't separate him from me. So he lived in my underwear for 6 months because he was taking
Okay.
my heartbeat and my body
Oh
heat
my God.
to stay warm. And I had some very fascinating board meetings where his head would pop out in the middle of the board meeting for dinner. Everybody would suddenly be fixated on my boobs, and I would go like, "Why is everybody staring at me?" And then I'd realize Dobby had popped his head out, which is pretty funny. But yes,
Oh my gosh.
over 10 years, I got more. I got another one that was paralyzed, and yeah, I've done my best to assist because I now have a level of skill, and there are not that many people that are capable of rehabbing them. They're quite complicated little people. They're very, very special. And yeah, that's my hobby. I take anything. I've had hedgehogs, I've had bush babies, I've had squirrels, I've had literally everything. I even worked with lion cubs at one stage. My friend has a leopard and a lion that live together. They think they're related. Both came in as cubs, so he looks after them. it's interesting how animals sometimes are so much more compassionate than people and form the most extraordinary bonds.
Wow. I'm so curious about this bush baby. I
Do you
had to
want me?
Google it just to bring
Oh,
up a
yes, aren't they
picture as
beautiful?
'cause yeah, I wanna see it.
Let me fetch him. I'll go and fetch him and see if he'll come down.
Okay, we'll take a little
Give
quick
me a sec.
break.
So this is him. Let me just, there we go. Say hello, Bookie. So this
Oh,
little
wow.
so this little fellow was very abused. This is not a normal shape of a bush baby's nose. It's quite flat because they beat him so badly that his sinuses were damaged. And then if you look at his little foot here, you'll also see that he has a straight foot, a toe. They broke his toes. And then if you look at his tail, you'll see that they cut off his tail, which was really bad, which is why he has this stumpy tail. And when he came to me, he also had, I had to take out 7 of his teeth because his jawbone was rotten and his teeth were rotten. So as a result, he's not a candidate for rehabilitation. He cannot go back to the wild because he doesn't balance too well. And he's very tiny, as you can see. He's very little. But he's
I've
quite
got
fat now. He came to me, he only weighed 165 grams. He now weighs 230 grams. So he's now quite recovered. But he's an old man as well. He must be 9 years old now. So he's not caged. I don't cage him. He's free to come and go as he wants, pretty much. Um, and as you can see, he's quite feisty now, whereas before he couldn't even move around. He'll bite me now. Um, whereas before he couldn't do that. He was very, very, very sick. And also what he came with was a very bad bug in his lungs. And the vets and I worked together for a long time to actually find an antibiotic combination because we would have to try, and then if he didn't respond, we would have to try another combination. So eventually we used a nebulizer with an inhalant, an antibiotic inhalant, combined with Zithromax. And we eventually kicked he couldn't breathe. He used to go and now he's very feisty, as you can see. They've got very, very strong. Whoops! They've got very, very strong back legs. So they're very muscular, and they can jump up to 6 meters with this little body. So, and that's how they hunt. They jump in the trees and they collect things. Hello, Cooks.
it's so cute. Like,
He's
it's so
he's
adorable.
very cute, but he's very busy.
Yeah, he seems very hyperactive, like he could,
Well, remember they're nocturnal, so he will be active because it's nighttime here. So I know it's daytime for you, but it's almost 11 p.m. now here. So they wake up, they go to bed at about 6:30, and then they wake up again at about 8, and then they start to play and hunt. So they catch all the lizards, and they're meat eaters, but they also eat vegetables. So they can eat, basically, if I cook food, they can eat off my plate, which they do. But we also they live on insects, so we feed them mealworms, and yeah, it's and crickets, and they eat rain spiders. They eat literally lizards, anything that moves in the house. They actually eat. They'll eat anything. Like I said, if I could have put him back in the wild, I definitely would have, because it's not ideal for wildlife to live with humans. As long as they're free, I don't have a problem with it, but I have a problem with caged wildlife. I don't think it's fair. They're wild for a reason. But the bush babies specifically, they are very, very intelligent, very special little creatures, and deserve to be protected. They really do deserve to be protected. They're very special. The problem is that they sell for $3,500 in the US, which is big money for any African person, because in our we're about 19 rand to the dollar. Our currency is about 19. We get it for $1. You get 19 of our currency, and $3,500 is big money. It's in excess of 60,000 rand, and most people in South Africa um, don't earn anywhere near that in a year. So, if they can get their hands on a few bush babies and get them to a few wildlife traders, they can make pretty good money. And it's very, very sad, because these little creatures end up in homes in China, in America, in areas that they shouldn't be, because they don't do well in the cold either. And it's very tough for them, because they are extremely sensitive. They also live in families, and they are very gregarious, but they are also very dependent on being with their own species. And it's sad for them to live solitary lives. It's not natural for them, and for that reason, he now can act as a surrogate for little ones, because he's very good with tiny babies, and he's not aggressive with them at all. He rears them. He's done it a few times. Yeah, so he will continue to be with others, and he interacts. So that's really good. But at least he's now safe for now, with me, and he's got a companion, so he's a very happy little person.
I see that. Does he get to go on horseback rides with you?
So my little one that I rescued, the 9 gram one, he used to ride, because he was on my person all the time, whether it was a show jumping show, or whether it was a ride in the bush, or wherever we went, he was the boob baby. So he rode with me his whole life. He was very, because he didn't actually understand that he was a bush baby, because I'd raised him from day one. He thought he was a person. He was larger than life. He would box with you. He would fight you. He would stand on his little legs. He would take on humans. He didn't care, and he slept in my neck. He always came, and when it was bedtime, he would come and he would cuddle in my neck, and he would sleep there. So yeah, he did everything with me. Opal, this little one, or he can't. He was so badly abused that when I got him, he was terrified of human hands. You couldn't hold him like I did now. He still doesn't like to be constrained, because he was beaten. So he has a fear. So I leave him to just do what he wants to do. As I said, he can come and go. He's not caged, but he is protected.
Oh, I'm so glad we're able to end today on a happy note, to meet your little bush baby and see the joy he brings you, and like your love for animals, your compassion. You've had an extraordinary life, and I find it fascinating. It's definitely caused me pause for thought just in the differences, not just between the countries, but just, between my upbringing, the environment I live in, the criminal justice system, the politics, like on and on. This is why I love having these conversations with people across the world. It helps open my eyes to the world. Sometimes we become so narrow-minded, where I live and what I do from day to day. We take things for granted, even just my safety, or so I really appreciate your vast depth of knowledge, and what you contribute. I'm amazed and in awe of your intelligence, and I feel like you're an extraordinary person. So thanks for hanging out with me.
Thanks you for inviting me. It was great. And it
Yeah,
was lovely meeting
wonderful.
you and hearing your side of life as well. I'm sure it's very interesting and very different. And one day we can possibly compare notes. I think we'd have a lot to share.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, where can people find you if they want to connect with your business or you personally, just to follow your journey?
So the easiest place I think to link up with me is LinkedIn. It's Laurie Pieters-James, and then the company also has a website if you'd like to learn more about cybersecurity and I mean, we work on the trafficking side as well, the human trafficking side on the cyber. So that's very interesting. And I do try to publish articles every week. Sometimes I don't get to it. Court gets busy. But yeah, I'm happy to share knowledge. I'm happy to connect with people. It's a very open profile. I obviously have Facebook and Twitter as well. So you can find me there, but I'm not as active there as I am on LinkedIn. I tend to try not avoid the platforms. I do post there, but it's not as active. I probably wouldn't pick up Twitter for 2 or 3 days. Sometimes I don't get to that. Life is a little bit busy here dealing with the complexities of people.
Yeah. Well, I will in the future, have another conversation with you again about sex trafficking. And I know that there's so much more we could talk about. And I have so many questions. But anyway, I thank you for all the information that you shared today. And I really enjoyed our time together.
Yes, and likewise. And I hope your viewers aren't put off about visiting South Africa because it's a very special place. And like I said, I would just say that if you do come here, just link up with somebody that can advise you on how to stay safe in the country and how to, or even get a security guard to travel with you. It's something that we provide here. Not in my company, but it is an available service and you can be very safe here. It's just a case of situational awareness and being aware of your surroundings and knowing what to look out for. But I wouldn't dissuade anyone from coming. It's a wonderful country and something to experience.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Laurie. Thank
And
you.
thank you, Dana.
All right, bye for now. Thanks for listening. For episode details and merch, check out killerpsychologistpodcast.com. And for forensic services, you can book online at psychologydr.com. That's psychologydoctor.com.